And we're back. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Third Odyssey, back to the Motherland. Last time, we introduced the mod, and just sort of went over the basic background stuff. This time, though, we're going to finally unpause the game, and get moving on our departure towards the Americas and the actual beginning of the campaign.
If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not
Also, just ignore all the diplomatic pop-ups for now. They are going to be totally irrelevant soon. The Silk of the Empire. The Emperor Ionis's cousin, Theophilus Palaiologos, mathematician, grammarist, and second in line for the throne behind the emperor's brother Constantinos, has requested that the vast silk reserve of the Roman Empire and the resources required to produce it be collected into our westbound fleet. Silk, he says, has long been the garment of royalty and empire, and would make a fine luxury trade good as well. Such would cost us precious space, though, and we may need all the people and supplies we can get. At the very least, he requests that if we do not take the silk along, that we instead destroy it to prevent the Ottoman Sultanate from discovering its production methods. Add it to the list, then. Add it to the list. The fate of the Mauryan despot. Rotate. And the final question remains in regards to our holdings. While we're resigned to Constantinople, falling to the Turks, we can still decide the fate of our southern holdings. The Republic of Venice is attempting to build an empire in the eastern Mediterranean, and they would be grateful for a hold over the strong defensive positions of the southern highlands. A delegation from the Republic of Genoa, headed by a certain Archbishop Leonard of Chios, has expressed a desire to increase their economic penetration of the Aegean and Black Sea, something that could easily be accomplished by selling the despotate of the Morea to Genoa. Finally, we could grant direct independence to the Morean despotate under the leadership of the emperor's brother Theodoros. So we have three options. We sell the province to the Venetians, we'll get a ship and supplies in the form of a light ship in development upon landing in our new territory. Sell Genoa and we'll get troops and arms for more starting manpower. Or grant them independence. We actually have no reason to do that, because that doesn't give us any immediate benefits upon arriving in the new world. I'm going to sell it to Genoa for the extra manpower, because we're going to want to take Greek fire and probably silk. So getting some more manpower out of this now would be quite helpful. The Venetian captains. A pair of Venetian captains who sold their vessels or usage on the journey have recently approached the emperor and his advisors, stating that to cross the Atlantic Ocean, the Romans would need more than just a fleet of galeases and small caravels. One of the merchant captains, Gabriele Trevisano, has requested a portion of our rapidly dwindling treasury and set aside to purchase the latest in Italian and Portuguese ship designs to replace the less seaworthy ships in the Roman Navy, as well as to hire Mediterranean navigators and sailors and to retrofit our older designs with modern weapons. We'll have to consider it, at least. final checklist. We've gone through all the plans and looked over every option available to us. Now is the time to finalize our decisions and choose how much of our limited space we should devote to the non-essentials. Our current supply status is plentiful. And I think it goes without saying that we want to dedicate some ships to holding Greek fire. That's basically a given. We are not fucking leaving behind Greek fire, don't even ask.
And breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
And let's see, books and scrolls. And we'll also load up the books and scrolls for more technology and idea costs. That just strikes me as an excellent idea to bring some knowledge along with us. Sufficient? I don't think we'll be hiring the captains and their cannons, though. That just seems like an unnecessary expense at this moment in time. However, we will be bringing the silk. If we're setting up in a new land, then I want to be able to make some money when we get there. So, now let's set sail. Rebels and exiles. An Ottoman prince, born here in exile after his grandfather's defeat in a failed attempt for the Ottoman throne, has heard of our plan. The man, Orhan Celebi, was never returned to the Ottoman Empire on implied threat of execution for his grandfather's crimes. Needless to say, he fears such a punishment at the hands of his cousin Mehmed, and has requested a ship be allocated to him and his regiment of retainers. In return, he promises to train the Roman army, such as it is, in the advanced tactics of the feared Janissary Corps, and also offers his personal service as a general in the Roman service. In addition, a former Ottoman officer named Georgi Kastroti, called Skanderberg, has rebelled from Turkish service and traveled to the city in search of support. He's also learned of our impending flight and requested that some of his people be allowed on board. Unfortunately, there's only enough space left on our transports for one group. Either Skanderberg or Orhan must stay behind in the doomed city. Both men have promised not to share our plans to our enemies, come what may. Okay. We could allow either Skanderberg or Orhan on board. Let's see. If we let Skanderberg on board, Orhan will take control of Constantinople and try to seize the Turkish throne. If we let Orhan on board, we will get a cheaper advisor. Sorry, Skanderberg, but you're not offering me any skills of real value here, so training in janissary military tactics for our army is much more valuable than just a general, I think. So, welcome on board, Orhan. Skanderberg, have fun attacking Turkish lands. have fun. But we're getting towards departure from the west now, but we have some Granadan pirates. Hearing the approach of our fleet, a large Granadan force grew up near the gates of Heracles to force us to pay for safe passage. Enticed by the promise of loot, contingents from Morocco also sailed in support of the Granadan fleet. We could pay the toll, or we could force the strait with a sea battle. We might still take losses. The Roman navy is still one of the best in the Mediterranean. Okay, we could pay them. We lose 80 ducats. Or Hans Janissaries board them. We would lose a regiment and gain an additional escort ship and some naval tradition and prestige. Set them alight with Greek fire. It'll partially deplete our reserves, but we'll still be alive. Or we lose a regiment of soldiers. And devastate one of their provinces a little bit. I'm thinking a little bit of piracy is in order here. If they want piracy, we'll give them piracy. The Portuguese wish to strike a deal. 2 Portuguese ships sailed near our fleet today with an envoy. Their leader states that one of the ships and accompanying supplies can be used by us on our travels, and we agree to share our discoveries with them. They are under the impression we are heading south to explore the coast of Africa. One of our advisors suggested that we use this opportunity to trick the nations of Europe, making them believe we were caught up in a series of increasingly treacherous storms filled with sea monsters, and that our last act was to inform them. That way it might take some generations before their curiosity returns. Alternatively, we could inform the Portuguese of our true intentions, providing us with a potential future ally in Europe. I think we tell them, and we'll get some light ship and base production on arrival. They'll like us more, and we get a bit of money. After all, we'll need to pay our soldiers when we arrive, since we're going to get there and then have to establish a settlement before we can get an economic base going. That would strike me as the smart thing to do. Now, we're just sort of waiting on things to happen. Because this series of events is not done yet, as we have yet to discover the new world. A storm approaches. For several weeks, we've had calm seas and good sailing. Sadly, all good things must end, and we've encountered a large storm that has swamped our fleet. Our only refuge was a relatively calm section in the center, and we were able to regroup there for a time. The brave captains from Italy and Portugal proved their worth in leading us safely out of the storm for good. But after taking stock of the surviving ships, we've been informed that, in addition to the Emperor falling ill, several of the ships have been blown off course, including the royal ship. So, some monarch point stuff is lost, and we lose an advisor. Better that than losing tax and manpower, I think. A great catastrophe has occurred. After surviving the Great Storm, a number of crew throughout the fleet became stricken with severe tuberculosis. Despite the best efforts of our greatest physicians, Emperor Ioannis VIII also fell victim to the disease. While some say that it was just an unfortunate tragedy, others say it is divine punishment for fleeing Constantinople. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the Greek variant of Constantinople, so I'm not going to try. In its darkest hour. Regardless, Ioannis and the eighth's brother Constantinos has been crowned emperor and will finish what his brother started. Good luck to him. Our current ruler dies and we get a new one. And more stability. Which is good because that evens out our stability. Because we're still at 0, which kind of helps. The Pantheon worship. Now, this is a big one because this is one of the major events that will turn up during the establishment in this mod. That you can decide if you want to stick with the current Greek Orthodox faith or convert back to the old Greek pagan gods of like Zeus and Hera, Apollo, and all of them. The Pantheon worship. The storm lies a few days behind us now, leaving many at the edge of despair. The venerable scholar and philosopher Gemistos Phleton asked to see you, and you invited him into your quarters. He's a very learned man, renowned for his wisdom and knowledge, and he has served us as an imperial advisor in the past. So it seems strange that he of all men would suggest such a thing. Returning to worshipping the old gods, the Roman and Hellenic gods. He says he studied our history and noticed a downward trend ever since the first emperor converted to Christianity. He states that despite being the servants of God, he did not help defend Jerusalem or Constantinople from the Muslims, and the recent storm can only illustrate the temper of Poseidon. If there are gods, he continued, they must be as flawed and ill-tempered as the old Hellenic gods. We do best to appease them, rather than speak to a god that may listen but seems not to care. And that is exactly what we're going to do. We are going to convert our state religion to that of Basilia Romaeon, and as we convert our leader and heir, we'll lose some legitimacy. This guy will join our court. We'll get some other bonuses. We would get some stability for refusing, but this is what we're going to go for. And now, we need to pick a deity to worship, since we are following a pagan religion. But I'm going to hold off on picking a deity until we actually arrive in our new land, actually. Because it would seem to make sense to judge that based on what happens when we arrive. The Empire of Elysia. Despite everything, despite all the hardships, toil, battles, storms, and plagues, we have succeeded. We have successfully arrived in the Varangians' western land. Truly, such a verdant land beyond the pillars of Heracles can only be the Elysium from ancient myth. It is only now, however, that the cost becomes apparent. Every scrap of technology, every single book, On the Imperial Library, every scroll detailing schematics or architecture or mathematics is one less bushel of wheat, or one less person we could have taken. On top of that, the Ottoman Turks had probably already invaded what's left of our home the minute we stripped the garrisons and set sail. What's done is done. Our flagship becomes available for duty, and we don't get any additional production manpower or anything. And, well, you can read it. And Forgotten Homelands. I am no longer aware of what goes on in our ancient homelands. Now oblivious to the old world, we can focus on the new world ahead of us. We ever return. The old world is no longer mapped, so that's an interesting thing that happens here. We don't have mapping knowledge of the old world anymore. We just know about the stuff around us here. Which helps us just focus on what there is relative to us, I suppose. Imperial Cult. The recent conversion of Elysia to Hellenism, time has come for the Emperor to choose his patron deity, proving to his people that his rule is legitimate in the eyes of the gods. Let's see here. I think we're actually going to go for Poseidon. Mainly for the global settler increase, because a bunch of our early expansion is going to be through colonization, and settler increase will help with that, I think. Unless I'm completely and utterly wrong about everything, which I very well could be. Brave New World. We get 250% increase to settlers. So this is a feature that you get as Elysia that helps with establishing the empire over here, because early on when you need to seize a few bits of land in order to establish a foothold, you get a massive increase to your settlement abilities so that you can colonize stuff really, really fast. It decreases as you take more land, but at the beginning, that's a nice thing that you have to be able to expand. We also have eager explorers, and we discovered some remain mostly unknown, but that did not stop our explorers, without much trouble, explored the area around our capital. Get +1 colonist, and minus 100% colonial range. We need to choose a native policy, though, or how we're going to deal with the natives. Let's see. I think I'm actually going to go with native trading policy, because this would be the most Romanish type of policy towards the natives, I think. Trade with them and try and convince them that your way is the best, and eventually they assimilate into your population. That strikes me as the most roleplay-esque type of approach to take. Coexistence and repression. Well, repression's just a little bit too dickish under the circumstances. I may change this later, but for now we're going with trading. And First things first, it's time for us to start establishing a settlement over here. And we will send a colonist there for that. Okay. And now we'll be busy establishing our settlement there. But I'm going to have to wait for it to be established, or we can set up any more. I mean, sure, I could just pull my colonist out and deal with it that way, but I don't think I want to. Salvaging the fleet. On unloading the last of the cargo, our sailors realized that our fleet had taken more damage than we originally thought, and is in need of urgent repairs. There is a debate occurring among the people on the usefulness of repairing the fleet at all, as it will be expensive to repair and maintain. The alternative is that we break down the ships for wood, which we can then use to help build local infrastructure, or for building a basic wooden palisade around the settlement to help protect us from native incursions. We're not actually going to keep the ships. This early on, we don't actually need a navy, because all the wars that we're never really going to fight early on will be ground-based engagements, where it's just sort of, hi, we own your shit now. Invasion, annex, is going to be how all of our early wars look. We are going to break it down for local infrastructure, I think. More base tax, more base production. Yes, please. And yeah, we start with a lot less manpower because I took all the extra shit. Unfortunately. So that was maybe not the best of ideas. For now, I'm going to hold off on taking any advisors, I think. And we're moving it up to 4 speed. The local natives like us more because of our religious practices. Yeah, we're not about to be starting any wars or anything with the natives, I don't think. For one thing, they have a pretty big looking alliance over there. In one case. And in another we actually can't because of the still recovering from voyage thing. It's just worn off. But I think we want to try some peaceful expansion at first. Once we've claimed the region around our home, then we'll consider it. So we're just going to work on peacefully colonizing the local area for now. And we have a trade good. Alexandria there will produce fur. Organizing the masses. We've now established a basic settlement. It isn't pretty or all that large, but it is our home now. We have a basic militia for defending the town, set aside some land for farming, cleared a local forest for wood. The overseers that run these projects are requesting more workers. However, there are not enough for all of them. Where should we send the peasants? Send them to the farms. Give me that bait stacks. And these particular natives would like an alliance. I'm not opposed to the idea, so I'm going to say yes for now. It would probably benefit us to have at least one ally around here. So I'll maintain that alliance for now, but we will see where things go, is essentially what I'm saying. Yes, I'll take that military power, I think. Thank you so much. Apologies, I'm not talking very much for a bunch of the colonization, but for one thing, I just really like the music in this mod, and I just kind of want to sit back and listen to it. And for another, we're kind of in the early build-up stage. There's not a whole lot to comment about, so I'm just sort of sitting around and letting things happen as they will. Militia matters. The aristocracy that ventured west with us has grown increasingly concerned about small-scale raids by the red-skinned barbarians native to this land. To that end, they began recruiting small bands of their kith and kin to defend the Roman holdings and conduct counter-raids. By appointing a general unconnected with the aristocracy, these small-scale militias can easily be turned into a unified force. The only question that remains is where to best deploy them. I'm going to say we ensure the safety of the city above all else. Because clearly the city is where the important people live, and therefore it's the most important place of all, right? Kind of an arrogant, elitist thing to be saying, but, you know. It's called an aristocracy for a reason, guys. It is called an aristocracy for a reason. After all. The Lenape are fabricating a claim on our colony. Wow, those dicks! Fortunately, our ally would come in on our behalf if anything happened. so we don't have to worry over much, but once I get a few more settlements down and start having positive income, I'm going to begin recruiting a larger army so that we can start pushing out against a few of the native tribes we aren't allied with. Nobles request housing and land for farming estates. The ruling class who came with us are requesting we provide them with large estates benefiting their status that can be used for subsistence farming and growing cash crops, and of course their personal wealth. We could just give them land at the usual price, which will allow them to quickly establish their farms. Alternatively, we could charge a premium for the land, which will increase our treasury, what temporarily bankrupt the nobles. We don't want to piss off the nobility and cause loyalty issues. They're an important part of our society, so we need them to stay loyal. So I'm going to give them the land for free. Thus, it does give us some very nice bonuses from a mechanical perspective, so there's also that. And our colony in Neo-Alexandria is nearing establishment, so we're going to be able to move on to Delaware soon, or whatever we end up calling it. Although, maybe I should move on to somewhere else, because they are looking rather aggressive there. Apparently the natives really like us, because they're sending us some gifts. Money, manpower, and they like us more. And we now have about 2,000 more manpower than our max cap, so that is certainly a good thing. Manpower recovery and available mercenaries have gone up. Excellent. And next month, our colony there in Neo-Alexandria should be properly established. And we can decide between Delaware and Doeg. Yep, there it is. So, do we go north or south? Is the question, I suppose. If we go here, the chances are we'll get more fur, which would be handy. Chances are about the same for that if we go south, but it has a smaller population of natives. But down there's a mild winter, so that would have some supply issues at this time of the year. Or we could go to the Chesapeake there. Oh, wait. Chesapeake has an estuary. Plus 10 on the local trade value. I say we go there, actually. I say we go there. Basic temple? Religious leaders want us to start building a temple, but we can only build a basic one using wood and stone because of our resources. The Emperor's advisors mind him if he paid for it out of his own treasury. He would have increased control over where the temple's tax income is invested. Let's see. We could refuse, gain 1 base tax, but lose prestige. It's too expensive. Just lose prestige, but get a free temple. Or pay for it, I think we'll pay for it just to avoid losing more prestige, honestly. Plus, it's not like we don't have the money for it. The Elysian homeland. Now that we have found the new capital, it's time to expand our influence to the lands that surround it, as this would provide a buffer zone that any enemies must first pass through. They hope to one day benefit from what may become the cultural and economic center of our empire. You can see it already. We get a bunch of cores and stuff, and some stuff renamed, and immigration, or emigration. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to say that, quite honestly. Conquest against the Powhatan. That's them right there. Unfortunately, they have an alliance with someone we don't know about yet. I'm going to expand as much as I can right now, though. Just try and take over as big a chunk of land as possible. For the economic base and other things. Visitors from the north. We have received a delegation from a previously unknown group of people to the north. Seem to be the remnants of Varangian colonists that were thought, colonies even, that were thought abandoned centuries ago. According to historical documents, the Varangians of old made fearsome raiders, and eventually became distinguished traders in their own right, but only because raiding became impossible to accomplish with the advancement of fortifications in Europe. We, along with the natives of this new world we call Elysium, do not have access to such fortifications, and are vulnerable to coastal raids by these people. To avoid unneeded conflict, we have decided to send a delegation of our own to the north to talk with the leaders of these Varangians. Paradiplomatic delegation. And let's hope they feel like talking rather than raiding. Our diplomats have finally arrived at the northern Varangian colonies, and were quite surprised. They were expecting barbaric dwellings filled with horned pale men. Instead, they found quite the large wooden city. It housed a strange mix of both pale and native men. And while one could say the city was underdeveloped by our standards, their apparent success in such terrible isolation was a marvelous sight to behold. When our diplomats were finally received by their leaders, they were given true trade propositions. One, the most northern of the colonies, called Hellenic, promising a stable source of naval materials from their ongoing naval operations, and the other with the southern Markland, that promised instead a wide array of exotic ivory, furs, and oils. The northern colonies made it clear this was a diplomatic play, and that accepting one offer would exclude the other. I think exotic goods sounds like an excellent idea to me. More production efficiency and more trade power. And that also results in a military alliance, apparently, which... They apparently also want a royal marriage with us, and I'm going to accept. And... if it hasn't already become clear based on how I was zooming out the camera like that, yeah, we have Viking colonies in Canada. That's a thing now. That is a thing. Viking colonies in Canada. Yep. By the way, Oh, we don't have any forts. I would have mothballed our capital forts if I could, but we're not losing that much money. And the natives like us because of our pantheon. We can't declare them our rival just yet, I assume, because this is a colony we're establishing, and isn't yet actually fully part of our empire. By the way, I'm going... Oh, we already have our army and fleet maintenance about as low as it can go. I think I'm going to slightly raise it up to about 50%. So that we have some army maintenance and they won't get immediately wiped out if they're attacked. But we're also not spending too much money on them. I'm also going to mothball our one-ship fleet in order to help with our finances. Lose more diplomana points, lovely. Gotta be honest, much as I hear a lot of people bitching about mana in EU4, to be perfectly honest, I don't give a shit. So if you've come here just to complain about the Monarch point system, then please show yourself out or shut up, because I don't give a damn. And we will help the natives with their diseases by throwing money at the problem. Because money solves everything. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So, Powhatan is being a dick towards us. Color me not surprised. Salt and Ivos. Okay. I'll take that. The frontier skirmishes. As more and more of the Roman refugees settled on the frontier, I came into contact with some red-skinned barbarians native to this land. In response, Prince Orhan led his retinue of janissaries in a series of expeditions to combat the natives. The barbarians, after several skirmishes, surrendered to Orhan's well-equipped, highly disciplined force. The natives of our immediate frontier will no longer trouble us, and most of the janissaries have garrisoned the area to ward off further barbarian attack. We could say that they make for fearsome soldiers. Orhan becomes available for duty as a general. We get a couple of levy infantry to supplement our forces. All the natives in Ivos, Delaware, and Doeg will lose ferocity, so they won't be as likely to revolt. We'd also gain a whole bunch of manpower in Ivos, so our colony would be nearly finished. Basically, about a year ahead of schedule. Alternatively, we could... their expertise will be of better use in the capital. Orhan will become an advisor instead. Cheaper to employ. We'd get an additional 2,000 manpower. We still get the 400 population in Ivos, and the decreases to aggression and ferocity from the natives, as well as some base manpower in Ivos. I suppose it's just down to if we want a general or an advisor. I think having him as an advisor would be better. Plus, the extra manpower would be kind of nice. And yeah, now Ivos is just about colonized. Couple more months and that should be done. Then I'll probably move on to Doeg and Moritok. Though they won't be called those once we're done. As once I get those, then all of our territories will be able to be linked up by land. Sacrifices to the gods. While Romans and Hellenes may not really have had much belief in their old gods, they valued piety and tradition highly nevertheless. You can mock the gods all you want, but they want to be worshipped, and you'd best give them something to avoid risking their wrath. You could sacrifice anything from cattle to food to gold to weapons. These sacrifices could be burnt or thrown into a pit or deep pond. Will you honor the gods? Yes, we will. We are going to make our sacrifices. We wouldn't be a proper Hellenic ruler if we didn't sacrifice to the gods. So I'm going to try to do that sacrifice to the gods thing every chance I get, really. Even though I could have avoided that, and the other one was positive as well. Our colony is now self-sustaining. That's gone down a bit. Yes. More of that. So we will settle Doeg next. Yes, we're going to try to sacrifice whenever we can, although we might not always manage it. And now we have Odessos being colonized. Down to 2 speed. And the Renaissance has just popped up. So, this is how technology works in the current EU4, because it's no longer you are Western great or you're not Western, that sucks, work on becoming Western for technology. Sorry about that. Satan just decided he wanted a word. And by Satan, I mean the cold callers. As I was saying, technology is no longer based on Western or not Western, where if you're in the Western technology group, you just get nothing but good things, but everyone else develops their tech slower. Now you have something called institutions, which, if I go over to the technology screen, I should be able to explain it better. So, institutions are things, philosophies, beliefs, and all that that influence how well you're able to develop your technology. And they spread over the world based on, for one thing, where they started historically. They're weighted to show up there. So the Renaissance shows up in Italy first. And you can only embrace one if it's spread to a certain portion of your country. And and I think there might be something about if you're next door to a country that's already embraced it. So, there are a total of, as you can see from this, 7 institutions in the game. We start with feudalism embraced at the very start. The next one is the Renaissance, which is just turned up. Then there's colonialism, the printing press, global trade, manufactories, and the Enlightenment. And the more institutions there are in the world you don't have, the more of a penalty you get towards researching technologies. I was struggling to think of how to phrase that for a second, but basically, if you don't have a lot of institutions, because if the institutions are turning up in Central and Western Europe and you're in like China or the Americas, then they're going to take a very long time to spread to you, which means your technological growth rate is going to suffer. And that's just something you have to deal with, which I really like this method of dealing with the whole technological growth thing more than just Western good, not Western bad, as it used to be. But back to the event, the Renaissance. Travelers speak of a great rebirth of old ideals in faraway lands. It's hard to treat such rumors seriously, though according to the reporters, great secrets have been uncovered by the thinkers of this Renaissance. And countries that have not fully embraced the Renaissance institution will receive an increasing technology cost penalty of 1% per year, up to 50% at most. So you can see that you can possibly hit the max penalty on a lot of different institutions, which is really going to punish you for being behind in your technology. But now it's the year 1450, and I think this makes for a good stopping point, actually. So I'm going to end this episode here, and we'll pick up next week with more colonization and expansion, and who knows, and we're finally getting to the point where I can be positive on my income, if only just, while establishing colonies. So we're getting a good economic base going on. And we will start spreading out a bit more aggressively soon, I think. As well as, once I get a solid core region set up, it will probably be time for a bit of strategic border relocation. So you can look forward to that sometime in the next few episodes, no doubt. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.